Welcome to the High Pressure Podcast with me, George Rotterman.
And me, Marie Williams. Brought to you by Reliably Ratterman.
Bringing you industry news and trends.
Plus, insightful conversations with industry leaders.
Let's get to today's show. We are so excited to have you on the High Pressure Podcast. And today, man, this is going to be a great one. We have Andrea here from Smart Hose, and we're going to talk about how hoses can be smart. So, Andrea, welcome to the High Pressure Podcast. And tell a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Andrea Guevara. I'm the president of Smart Hose Technologies, and I entered the business 20 years ago through a small investment that my family had done into the business. And we purchased the business out of asset sale with partners. And I came from the commercial real estate background, from an extremely different background, although I did have a marketing background as well. And I fell in love with the company. And the reason that I fell in love and was successful in building the company is that it's proactive. And I am a person that's always been very careful in life. And always wanted to have layers of protection before I knew what LOPA was or layers of protection. I was the ultimate person that was always preparing for worst case scenarios. So when I was exposed to this product, it was the perfect product for me to go out into the marketplace with my team and explain to everybody that's moving hazardous materials that you can do it in a safer realm. And so when I started in the business 20 years ago, safety wasn't as accepted of a solution as it is now. But as we move forward and things become modern, people realize it's more cost efficient to keep your plant moving than to have these instances, and more cost efficient to have quality products in your flow.
Yeah. And there's no doubt that there's been a big shift over the last 20, 30 years, how people look at safety and what the real cost of safety is, and the proactiveness you can do to not have incidences, and also human life and the effects it has on people's families. It's a big, which rightfully so and excitingly so. There's a very different focus on that. And one of the things I really love about this industry, is the fact that people are counting how many hours without accidents, what they can do to prevent accidents. And there's, as you know, there's a lot of great awards that go out to different companies that have had X amount of hours without any driver incidences or fill plants or other type of accidents. So Marie, when you hear about a smart hose, what is the first thing you want yourself to ask?
Yeah, well, what makes it smart is first. But really, the smart hose technology and that name has gained a lot of traction. So I would like to ask, what you've been in this business for so long and have, built it to what it is. What was that shift of that aha moment where users of smart hoses or candidates to use smart hose were like, I have to have this. This makes sense. I get why this is a non-negotiable in my system.
And there was an aha moment and a shift. And the shift was when you had probably about 12 years ago, 15 years ago, you had so much consolidation in the marketplace and the major marketers buying up different locations. So it happened with the industrial gas companies and then also all the propane companies. And so what happened was there was all that consolidation and everybody was buying existing infrastructure. And so regulation is rather behind. And what started happening is there was a culture shift in the majors to start adopting their own standards of safety so that they were going through all these new purchases and having a cohesiveness. And that was the shift in the industry. We were no longer seeing the industry waiting for regulation. They were regulating themselves because there was a major shift also with stockholders and investors that investors are now looking at, as George said, what's your safety rating? It's very important. When we look to invest with a company and they're publicly traded, we want to know what the risk is.
Yeah, and Andrew, we should probably say, because it'd be I know we all think all the folks out there know smart hose. I'm sure they heard the name, but just in 30 seconds, if you had to like say that's what a smart hose does, what would you say it is?
Smart hose products are hose and breakaway products. They're passive systems that act instantly and automatically without human intervention in case of catastrophic hose failure or unintended drive away. Whether that drive away is a tank truck, a rail car, a ship, a loading arm.
So essentially, if somebody backed up their big bulk truck, they backed it up to fill up a tank, whether it be a micro bulk tank or a bulk tank, and they're connected and they got it all hooked up. And as they're filling it, uh, and they may get all done, potentially they could get back in the cab of their truck for whatever reason, not realize it's still connected and pull away. And if they pulled away before and a hose was to rupture, it would then just be continuously free flowing out until you could get to some place to turn a valve off, which if it was nitrogen might be very hard because you could become asphyxiated by it and they'd have a plume of the liquid turning into gas and you would have a real problem and be able to figure out how to turn that off. And that is really what the smart hose main thing is that if that happens, it has an automatic system that it shuts that off, so you don't have to worry about all the product going out to the atmosphere. Does that?
That's right, George.
Yeah.
That's right. And think of it as a circuit. It's a circuit breaker. You're breaking the circuit. So if you're pulling, and for simplicity purposes, all of us have, unless you live in New Jersey, all of us have put gasoline into our vehicles. So when you look at what you see at those stations, you have a breakaway in between those hoses.
Good point.
Why do you have that? Because people unintentionally pull away. Because we're humans, and even on the industrial side, there's so many safety mechanisms so that drivers don't pull away. But the reality is pullaways happen every day. So if we can make those industrial transfers safer and that the operator isn't even aware it's there and they can't change it and it looks the same, it operates the same, there's no moving component that anybody is going to make any changes with it. And that's the beauty, is its simplicity.
And you know what? I got to tell you, my wife is not going to be real happy when I tell this story. But
Oh,
yeah,
I know where he's going. I
yeah,
was thinking
yeah. But it happens, right? And she told the story, and we all were like, she said she's got a great sense of humor, and she realized as she's pulling out of a gas station, she's pulling along behind her. What's that dragging behind me? And it was the spigot was still inside of her gas tank, but it was no longer connected to the pump. It was now part of her car. So it does happen. And I think when you look at the catastrophic things that can happen with a breakaway with liquid oxygen or liquid natural gas, it's a big deal, right?
And that's why we have our products are all approved by all of your major air separated gas companies, liquid argon, nitrogen, oxygen, all approved. And the same with high pressure because we are proactive. George, I will hook into your story. So I have never pulled away and I live in fear because of my business, because it would be so embarrassing for me. But we have what's called Wawa. We're in Philadelphia and we have Wawa. And so one day I was at Wawa getting gas and somebody did pull away and they left with the hose. And then the cashier came out and changed the hose.
Huh?
And my thought process is I'm not using that hose. And what I want to say about that is, and to let you know, is that our breakaways, our products that are the breakaways, are not field rebuildable. And any of your process safety engineers are so grateful for that, because if somebody has a pull away or partial pull away, they have to report it. We can rebuild them in our factory, but not in the field. So what you had happening with other breakaway products that are in the marketplace, which they all leak. We do not leak. We're a metal seal. They were having instances where they were pulling away and they weren't doing any reports to corporate.
Yeah.
So corporate really never had control. And so the fact that we're not field rebuildable, they love it because they have the control.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. And I think this ties into a couple of things, what Maria was saying earlier relative to the hoses. People in a way would say, well, it's a hose, that's just how it is. And then just make sure you don't have a pull away, meaning you drive off while it's still connected, or some other things could happen, right? While you're filling. And it was kind of like, just, well, that's something that goes to the territory. At this point in time, the regulations that are required if you're doing cryogenics, is it required on all cryogenics to have breakaways?
It is not. It's not a regulation in the US, it's a regulation in Europe. But the major companies
Yeah.
have most all of them have internal mandates.
Which is best practices with to
Right.
look what things are doing, why people are doing it. You could, obvious for safety reasons. My other question is there regulations if you're doing liquid natural gas? Because I'm going to ask this way because not all of our customers do everything. They do certain things, but if you're doing
Yeah.
liquid natural gas or LNG, as it's called, is that a requirement that you have to have a breakaway?
When you're transporting a hazardous liquid more than 10,000 gallons in an MC 330, 331 transport
Okay.
on the road, the DOT requires you have to have a passive safety device on that tank truck.
Okay.
We satisfy that mandate.
That's great. And then my other question is going to be, I'm just going to go down the list a little bit. So we know we have the atmospheric gases, oxygen, nitrogen, argon. We've talked about LNG, and then let's talk about hydrogen, because hydrogen is one that, it's very flammable. And what's the regulations on hydrogen at this point?
I don't see that there are too many regulations on hydrogen. We do belong to the Hydrogen Safety Committee of CGA.
Yes.
And so this is an emerging application. But I will tell you for hydrogen that we have some fantastic products. In hydrogen, we use a rubber Tefzel hose. The life cycles of that hose are 100,000 cycles. And the life cycle of a metal hose, which most end users are using, are 10,000 cycles. It's made to a NAHAT standard. And also, when you have metal hose and it's continuing to go back and forth, you get the tin canning effect and it will break. Those polymer hoses are just better hoses, and they're lighter as well, and they're less expensive. And that can be used for those small molecules, which include hydrogen and helium.
Okay. What is a rough difference between if you have a regular bulk hose, 20-foot regular bulk hose, just percentage wise versus a smart hose? What roughly is the difference in cost?
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because when we look at hose, the first thing we want to consider, even withstanding any sort of safety system, is that we're hose professionals before we're anything else, and we would never consider using any type of foreign hose. So the first thing that I'm going to say is that every hose that we use is with a trusted partner.
Mhm.
And these are companies and corporations that have an engineering department, and a lot of R&D goes into the products that we are assembling here, and they stand behind their products. And so as you're talking about LNG and all these different marketplaces that you're talking about, we all know that upstream things can be different depending on where they're coming from the ground.
Oh, for
So
sure.
these are the experts that we're dealing with. So difficult for me to give an actual percentage, but when we're talking about what is the uptick on a safety system, very little.
Well, one of the reasons I asked the question about cost is sometimes people look at cost relative to safety. And of course, we know safety is the first and foremost decision.
Yeah.
And I think that when we look at things, really the point I wanted to make is that when you look at the cost of a hose with the breakaway, it is more expensive, but you look at the long term and the risk factor, and it's very inexpensive for what potentially could happen. Because all you need is one incident to happen, and it could be,
Right.
especially if you got a plume of propane or a plume of LNG or a plume of liquid oxygen.
Exactly. That's something that we really have to be concerned about. And so when you look at the cost of adding that, the least considered component of any process safety system is the hose. It's also, if you look at accidents in the US and you go on to the governmental website, you'll see the majority of accidents are from hoses. Why? They're the least considered part of the process safety system, and they're also what operators are handling the most.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at costs and you're looking to evaluate the cost, my the way I look at it is it's actually an overall cost savings. And I'll explain to you actually why I think that as well, is when we're looking at things like different industries and what's regulated. So I'm going to pull the propane industry as an example. The propane industry has a 5-to-1 burst factor on their propane hose. That is mandated by the government. And so we have to meet that standard. Well, what that means is when Georgia's wife pulls away, if she were an industrial player, that's not going to break. So what's going to happen? The truck plumbing is probably going to be damaged. The plumbing in the plant is probably going to be damaged, and you could have human injury or loss of life.
Yeah.
And so that's what we try to look at. There is regulation out there, and hoses are built to their strongest strength, and there is that regulation. And so we need to take the other part of it and not over engineer where we're putting these hoses in service.
Well, you know what this reminds me of? I'm on the sales side, right? So um, when we look at sales metrics, if I'm saying are we in the green or are we in the red for this month? If we're in the red, okay, I just that month is bad, but that doesn't help me for making the month better. You have to back everything up to these little goals that you can control to then make sure that you're in the green, right? And I think you mentioned the word control earlier. I think that smart hose, from everything I'm hearing, allows someone to take control over what previously seemed to be uncontrollable, right? And so it's being able to back up the goals of safety to what you're saying is the most overlooked product, but actually has such a substantial impact on the safety. And it's just one little implementation and it takes care of so much. So it's kind of like that
Absolutely.
80-20 rule and able to achieve the goals
And
quickly.
Marie, if you take that, you put that in return on investment. If somebody was to look at what, because it's not a substantial amount more to get the breakaway hose, smart hose. If you look at the return on investment and you spread that over 5 years, whatever the life of that hose might be, I could ask Andrew what typically you would recommend for a hose, but let's just say it's 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. If you took what that extra cost was and you broke that down to what your per day operation cost is, it's probably a very, very small number relative to what it's keeping and preventing maybe could happen. Because again, all you need to have happen on, you could have a fleet of 100 trucks. All you need to have happen on is one. So,
Right.
yeah, so I agree with you, Marie. What are these things we can control so they don't just become other scenarios down the line? Yeah, it's a great point, Marie.
Yeah. And when you're looking at the smaller diameter hose, which we don't have a breakaway on those because you wouldn't want a breakaway on those, that is you have a system that's internal. So yes, are there external cables? Yes, and they get caught on everything and they don't protect for hose failure. They're just holding on for the cylinder and everything outside of what is the CGA or wherever you're connecting. But with our system, everything is on the interior. You're filling cylinders at a high pressure. If our hose were to break loose, you have some really dangerous whipping.
Let's talk about high pressure because we've been talking
Yeah,
about cryogenic, which is really important. Let's talk about high pressure. And maybe if you wouldn't mind, I think you have a little display. We could maybe give a little 30-second overview of how that actually works on a high pressure hose. And then I have a couple other questions I'd like to ask you about that.
sure. So all of our hoses have an internal cable that goes through the hose. This is a clear plastic sample. There are valves in the end fitting. And so if there is a catastrophic hose failure where the cable can extrude from the hose, it closes instantly and automatically in both directions. This is a 2-inch diameter. So this gives you an idea of what our flapper style design is. So it's the same system, a cable. This would be going through the hose. And then if there's a catastrophic hose failure, this closes instantly and automatically in both directions.
Okay, so a couple
So,
questions for you. On these
yes.
particular hoses, being that they have the cable going through the center, is there any
Mhm.
issue using it in auction service? Is there any problems
No,
with auction service?
no, and actually we're approved for oxygen cleaning by all the majors.
Okay, fantastic.
So, and we do have approvals from all the majors for our products in all the
Okay.
services.
So
Yeah.
one thing that happens with some hoses, if you ever go up to a hose and it's not connected to the other side or it fails, and you turn on a bottle of gas at 2,600 pounds pressure, you get the phenomenon they call whipping, where it starts
Hmm.
flapping around and it can get going so fast you can almost not see it. And actually
Right.
it can act like a knife. It can be very, very extremely dangerous. Um, Can you let's talk about high pressure hose. When it fails with your system, what happens as relative to whipping?
So if you actually cut our hose right in half, what you will see is a non-event, because the flow and the backflow are going to close that instantly and automatically in both directions. You will lose the content of the hose, but the flow stops from there.
Okay.
So that it is a non-event.
So let's say you had a regulator hooked up to a hose and it's hooked up to a manifold, and for whatever reason, the bottle fell over, and
Mhm.
now you got the hose being stretched or possibly disassociating from the fittings. What would happen in that event?
So the cylinder would fall over, and then because of how long it's stretching, the cable would close in both directions because there would no longer be the tension on those valves.
So if a distributor had certain applications that might be more prone to possible scenarios like that, not all scenarios are as prone to that. That would be a really great application where a smart hose would be put that in its place. Maybe a spot where there's a lot of change out of cylinders at a customer's location, or a customer himself might be changing out cylinders. That does happen at locations.
Yeah, that would be a great application, and I really do recommend anybody that is filling the cylinders and filling them on a 12-pack, that having Smart Hose. We at Smart Hose and I have traveled the world, and I have been in several facilities where I have met coworkers who lost their coworker from a hose breaking loose during filling cylinders.
Okay.
So it's actually a very dangerous application. And when I go to end users and I ask, I've never been in a facility where someone says they haven't had a hose break loose. Never.
I would like to talk about a couple of your applications. So,
Hmm.
settling plants, right? Marie, you've been in a number of settling plants.
Yes,
You have a hose that's specifically designed for settling,
we
and
do.
and then I believe also there's some situations where you have very high pressure, like more than 6,000 pound pressure. Some of these other applications, and you have a hose that's specifically designed for that as well. Is that correct?
We do. We right now have a hose that goes up to 35,000 burst pressure.
Wow.
So yes, we do have 6,000 pound hoses, and we have 9,500 pound
Yeah.
hoses as well. So now you have the air separated gases. They want to fill more, they want to fill quicker. And so that even takes into the consideration with the 9,500 pound hose is there's an issue with temperature when they're filling that fast. So that has now been taken into consideration, and we do have solutions for that.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Two questions for you on helium. One, uh, do you have, as far as any kind of issues with the helium, permeation, the type of hose you have, or is it all metal hose? Could you touch on what you have for the helium transfer hose?
Sure. So circling back to the ETFE, which is Tefcel is the brand name. So ETFE is a polymer product. We use it in hydrogen, and we for helium and hydrogen. And so that's that product that for hydrogen and helium, it can withstand those small molecules, and it actually has less diffusion than a metal hose. And
Okay.
as I said, the rubber hose is going to 100,000 cycles, and the metal hose is only going to 10. So the metal hose is going to fatigue much sooner than the rubber hose.
Yeah, so I imagine at high flow, that hose also doesn't have any problem with harmonics and all that where you do with rubber
No,
bellow
uh,
type hose.
it performs swimmingly. It's
Swimmingly,
really a
man,
great
like
product.
swimmingly.
Honestly, if you want to sell Marie, that's I like low hanging fruit, and that's an easy one because people love when you meet an end user and they're using a metal hose for helium and hydrogen, and they've been doing it since their inception, and you come to them and say, we have a polymer product that is less effusion, it's going to move it faster, and it's less expensive. You're a hero right away.
Andrea, I thought maybe you could touch on this. You've got a terminology you guys use called stamped.
Yeah, when you're looking at specking in hoses or breakaways, nobody needs to be the expert. We're the expert at Smart Hose. And all we need for either a breakaway or a hose assembly is the stamped information. So the acronym S is for size, which is the diameter and the length. T is for temperature. A is for application. M is for medium. That's what's going through the hose. The P is for pressure. So what is your working pressure? And I always like to really ask for the burst pressure as well. So you can back into the number. E is for ends. What end connections are you using? Using male, female, CGA. And D is for delivery. So what are you looking for? Where do you want it? Where do you need it? When do you need it?
I love that. And Rodderman has a great worksheet for that, where our salespeople around the country can collect that data and information, sit down with your engineers and make sure everything's tied into exactly what we need to have for the application. And one of our things, we have 3 claims: reliable people, reliable delivery, and our third one is reliable solutions, which is one of the reasons we're so excited to have you on the show today. As you look at yourself and managing folks and managing people, could you tell me a little bit about your philosophy and how you look at as a person running a business, what your philosophy is with people, and just get your overall concept?
Everybody has to share. Everybody has to be happy. We're business partners. If you're not doing well, I'm not doing well. If my team isn't doing well, I'm not doing well. Everybody has to lift one another up and do our best every day. And that's the most important thing. And to me, here at Smart Hose, we want to see everybody really having that balance in life so
Yeah.
that they can bring the balance to the marketplace.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Great answer. Another really nice tie into all of that is we all want our families to go to work, have a great, successful, positive day, learn stuff, be a little bit better than they were the day before, futures be brighter, and we want them all to get home safe, right? So it's
There you
really
go.
great, real great to have a product like Smart Hose where that it's just one more step to make sure that everybody will get home safe after they go to work every day.
Absolutely. And that's when we sit in these meetings and we look and we work with some of the majors. Some of these opportunities are just fantastic because we can look at things as hose safety experts and say, this is a liability right here.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. And that's really important. That's really important to us.
As a business leader, the speed at which things are changing, it is, it's just skyrocketing, right? I mean, what used to happen in a year now seems to happen in a month. Um, what are some of the challenges you've found over the last couple of years as things have changed and sped up?
So we used to look at our supply chain on 6 months, and now we look at the supply chain for a year, and it changes within that year.
Yeah.
And so it's been challenging as of late because of the tariffs have been changing pricing in every sort of raw material everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's been very unpredictable. So one of the things that we have done here is we decided that we are just going to be predictable and we're going to try to keep our costs from increasing until we can sort of let everything shake out and see where we need to be. But we can't weekly change our business plan. We
Okay.
have to stick with our plan, stick with our suppliers. Right now, we're working with our suppliers and say, okay, now those tariffs are backing off. So supply chain is backing off. Can we lower those costs back down? We started doing that as soon as the ruling, because we're always looking at how can we be more successful to our partners? How can we be more proactive? How can we be ahead of the curve?
Yeah. Well, hey, I tell you what, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the High Pressure Podcast today. It was great to get to know you a little bit better. We're excited about it. We've always been excited about the Smart Hose product line. It's such a differentiator in the marketplace. It does such a great job in solving issues, and it's such a quality product. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to be on the High Pressure Podcast. And I know all of our sales folks and all of our different people at Rodder Manufacturing feel exactly the same way from different conversations over the years that we've had. Marie, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
I just wanted to echo that, Andrea. It was so great getting to know you, and I'm excited for when we sit down again and get to learn even more about you and your story and just your philosophies on business and leadership. So, but thank you for all you do for our industry, keeping us safe, and involvement in the CGI, which is such an amazing organization.
Thank you. So it's been my pleasure to be with Rodderman. Through the years and working when I came into the industry, and the first end user location that I went to and I saw your labels everywhere, I just knew at that point, and I said, someday I'm going to get there. Someday. So I'm really, really excited to work with you and excited to see that you see the value, because the reality is that we all want our customers to be successful, and we have a really great business plan for everybody to be successful.
Yeah. That's great.
And as you said, George, everybody wants to go home at the end of the day.
That's right. Thanks for watching. Stay up to date with the latest news in the gas and welding industry by clicking on the subscribe button.
And check out one of our other videos to learn more. Find out more about Reliably Ratterman at rmiordered.com.